Today we want to look at doing some multi-step story problems. I know story problems aren't students' most favorite thing to do in math, but they're real-world applications of what we've learned when we multiply, divide, add, and subtract. And that's the thing we got to stop and think about. Anytime we're doing a story problem, we're only going to do the one of those four things at a time. We're going to do each step and then get our final answer at the end. Let's look at our first story for today. We'll say that a store manager ordered 28 crates of mangoes. Now there were 36 mangoes in each crate. When the mangoes were delivered, he sold all the ripe ones, and then he repacked the rest into 73 equal boxes. There were 12 mangoes in each box. We're going to try to find out how many ripe mangoes were sold. Well, before we can jump all the way to that question, how many ripe mangoes were sold, we've got to slow down, look at each sentence in our story problem, and do the work that's required for that. We're also going to have to ask ourselves a few questions along the way. So let's look at the first little chunk here. A store manager ordered 28 crates of mangoes, and there were 36 mangoes in each crate. I'm going to have to figure out how many total mangoes that store manager ordered. Well, if there's 28 crates and 36 in a crate, and I got to think, am I going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Well, 28 crates, 36 in a crate, I'm going to multiply here. So I'm going to look at doing that first. 28 crates of mangoes times 36 mangoes in each crate. Okay, 6 times 8. Let's do my multiplication here real quick. Add those up, right? Oh, so there's 1,800 mangoes that he ordered. Okay, that's good to know. He says, so then they were delivered, and he sold off all the ripe mangoes. And he took the ones that weren't ripe, and he put them in 73 boxes with 12 mangoes in a box. So there's 73 boxes of unripe mangoes with 12 mangoes in a box. I now need to kind of figure out, well, how many unripe mangoes were there? Okay, so let's do that. So there were 73 boxes of unripe mangoes with 12 mangoes in a box. Okay, let's go ahead and quickly do the multiplication. Don't forget your second row 0. Don't forget to add. So there were 876 unripe mangoes. So we had to ask a couple of questions. Well, if we're trying to figure out how many ripe mangoes he sold, we have to know how many total mangoes were ordered. We have to know how many unripe mangoes there were, and then we can figure out how many ripe ones were sold. So looking at this, if there were 1,008 mangoes ordered, and 876 of those were unripe, I've got to figure out what the difference between these two will be to find out how many ripe mangoes were sold. Well, there's the clue. What's the difference between the mangoes ordered and the unripe mangoes sold? Well, difference means I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to take 1,008, cross here real quick, and I'm going to subtract the 876 unripe mangoes. And find that there were 132 ripe mangoes sold. So our trick with story problems is that we look at the story problem all together. We got to look at it in chunks, ask ourselves some questions. What do I need to know? How am I going to solve this? Which operation am I going to do? And then kind of go through it. With this one, we first had to look at how many mangoes were there ordered all together. There were 28 crates, 36 in a crate, 1,008 ordered all together. Then we had to figure out, well, how many unripe ones were there? Well, we know there were 73 boxes of unripe mangoes with 12 mangoes in a box, so that meant there were 876 unripe mangoes. And then we knew that the difference between the mangoes ordered and the unripe mangoes repackaged would be how many ripe mangoes were sold. 1,008 minus 876 gives me the 132 ripe mangoes that the store manager sold. Breaking a story problem down into several pieces helps us solve a multi-step story problem.